this week we're doing one of my other signature soups. Creamy beef and potato with onions and mushroom. Right now I have the French pot warming up. I have everything set up, so let me change camera angles and we'll be right back. So right off the bat, I have the French oven warmed up. If you haven't seen my other videos, a French oven is literally a Dutch oven with enamel on it. Cast iron that's lined with enamel. It is a great pot to use to make soups. Literally, you can make a lot of one-pot meals out of it. First off, we're going to start off with a tablespoon of olive oil. I'll use the rest of this. It's about 2 tablespoons. We will let that get up to temperature. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and drop the beef in. Make sure I collect the plastic so it doesn't fall in. If you notice, I let it slide in from the side. You don't want to plop things down in heated oil and make it splatter. Best thing to do is just let it slide in, and once you have everything in there, you start dropping things on top. If you notice that one splattered. And it's about 1.25 pounds of chuck roast that's been chopped up. Good stew meat. Just like your Dutch ovens, you want to use wooden spoons on these. You don't want to scar up your enamel. Right now I have the temperature on medium low. We'll go ahead and move these around. And then what I want to do is take about 1/2 tablespoon of salt. Season all this, I'll just pinch it on. You want to start off with a tablespoon of salt. And use half of it for this. We will use a little more of it a little bit later on. About a teaspoon of black pepper. And go ahead and stir that in. We're going to let that brown for about 5 to 6 minutes. And we should be right back. What I'll do is let it brown, like I said, for 5 or 6 minutes. And I'll take it out of the pot and transfer it to something to hold while I do the rest of the onions, mushrooms, and the garlic and stuff. So we'll be right back. Alright, so 5 or 6 minutes have gone by. This is still a little rare. I see a few rare spots. There's definitely some caramelization spots in there. We'll go ahead and take a slotted spoon, remove the beef, leave the drippings. Like I said, I don't like using metal, but I don't have a wooden slotted spoon. So you don't go scraping around with this. You just scoop as much as you can. Like I said, you want to keep the oil and the drippings in there. We'll be cooking the garlic, onions, and mushroom in this. Alright, let me set this off to the side. Alright, so we'll go ahead and put the garlic in first. Take the slotted spoon, throw it in the sink. There we go. Give that a good stir. And go ahead and throw the onions in here. And give that a good stir. We're going to caramelize the onions as much as we can here. So leave the lid open so all the moisture can evaporate out. And this is going to cook on medium for about 20 minutes or so until they start to caramelize. Within the last 5 minutes, I'll throw the mushrooms in. That should pull the rest of the moisture out. Go ahead and break apart your onions as much as possible. And once they caramelize, we'll be right back. Alright, so as you can see, the moisture is evaporated out. The onions are starting to caramelize. You actually start getting a sweet smell off of them because they're breaking down. The sugars are starting to come out. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and add the mushrooms. And we'll render those down. That should pull the rest of the moisture out. Oh, let's go ahead and put that in the sink. There. So we'll go ahead and let those cook for about 5 minutes more. And then we'll get the beef stock in there and start getting it to boil. So let me stir this around for a bit until everything's caramelized out. And we'll be back in just a bit. Alright, so basically what we've done, we've rendered down the mushrooms until all the moisture, or most of the moisture, has come out. I have added salt to it, just a few pinches at a time, just to pull the moisture out and to evaporate off. So really what's left is kind of a mushroom syrup. With the caramelization, you may want to kind of rehydrate a little bit. I use Marsala or white one. Either one's good. We'll use probably about 2 or 3 tablespoons. Let that cook off for just a moment. You don't want to lose a lot of it. Those mushrooms, now that you cooked out a lot of the moisture, they're going to be soaking that in. So a lot of that wine flavor will be in those mushrooms. Go ahead and add 4 cups of beef stock. And let that come to a boil. In a few moments, we'll add the potatoes and let those boil in. and let them boil for at least we'll let them boil for 10 to 12 minutes, and while we're doing that, we'll make a roux and thicken up our cream. Let me get just a little bit of water here. I'm going to take a half cup and wash out the container. And we'll pour that into the soup. Like I said, right now we're just going to wait for it to come up to temperature and start boiling. And we'll be right back. Alright, you want to bring this up to a boil and high, and once it starts rolling, go ahead and drop it down to medium, and that's when you add in your potatoes. This is about 7 medium russet potatoes. Again, you don't want to just pour them in there. We're going to go ahead and start putting these in there. Okay, I may want to go ahead and pour them in because just pour them in slowly just to make sure you don't splash yourself. Earlier I didn't tell you how much onions. There was 2 small yellow onions chopped up. What I did is I julienned them, and about 8 ounces of white button mushrooms sliced. So you want to go ahead and just leave this at medium for about 10 to 12 minutes. And let those potatoes boil until they're fork soft. If you want, go ahead and put the lid on. It helps. Just keep an eye that it doesn't try to boil over on you. And while we're doing that, we'll move over here. Right now I have 4 tablespoons of butter melted down in the pan. That's about a half a stick of butter. We'll go ahead and start adding the flour until we get a paste. Add a little bit at a time. Go ahead and drop it to medium low. We'll put that much in for right now. Give that a good stir. Just chop the flour up. Yeah, do it a little bit at a time so you can get rid of all the clumps. But you want a good paste when you get done with this. Add some more. It's starting to form. Still a little thin. That should be enough there. Yep. So once it starts holding shape instead of being liquidy, that should be good. We'll let that simmer up or heat for a few moments. Add just a pinch of salt to it. A little bit more. Go ahead and fold that in. Now, I'm using heavy whipping cream. You can use whole milk, half and half regular whipping cream. If you want it rich, your heavy whipping cream would be the best. Go ahead and pour the whole thing in there. And then stir until it thickens. Go ahead and keep doing this for a bit. Once it thickens, remove it from the heat and set it off to the side, because you'll be pouring this into the soup whenever the potatoes are done. About 10 minutes into the potatoes boiling, go ahead and return the beef to the soup. This is going to take a few moments to thicken because the milk is still cold, or the cream is still cold. If it gets too thick, we add a little more milk to it. If it's too thin, we'll add more flour. But you want to watch that, because if you start adding too much flour, it gets way thick. So let me go ahead and make the cream, get that thickened up, and we'll be back in a minute when I add that to the soup. Before I forget, about 8 minutes in, I went ahead and added the beef to let that boil in there for a little bit. It should tenderize it some. Go ahead and give this a good stir. A lot of the roux is still at the bottom. It's still trying to mix. While it's doing that, you may want to go ahead and season it. What I usually do is I put a little bit of pepper in there to taste. And this is where you're going to add your Worcestershire sauce. I usually, which I didn't have much left in my bottle, so I usually go about a tablespoon. But that was more like a quarter of a tablespoon there. And it does look like the roux is starting to mix in a little bit, so what I'll do is I'll sit here and continuously stir this until it's time to add it to the soup. So 12 minutes is up. The potatoes aren't quite soft like I want them to be, which that's fine. They're to a point that it should be fine. This is still a little thick. Let me add some more milk to it. You don't want it too thick. So it's actually pretty good that I have more time to do this. There we go, it's starting to become thin enough. You want to kind of, about the consistency of grits, cream of wheat, depending on where you're from. You want it kind of runny a little bit, but you still want it kind of like a thin gravy. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and drop the temperature on this. Go down to about medium low. And start pouring this in. And wash it off in the soup. There we go. And we'll start mixing this into the soup. After a bit, should start thickening up the soup some. And we still have to add the cheese to it. What I usually do is about 8 ounces of shredded white cheddar. Yellow just kind of turns the soup into this orange mixture. The white cheddar keeps it kind of the same color. So for the next 10 minutes or so, we're going to stir this every once in a while, and we're going to let it simmer until the potatoes are done and the meat is tenderized. So it could be a half hour to 45 minutes. Let me go ahead and add the cheese. Actually, the cheese won't go in until like the last moment, so we'll be back when we're ready for that. Alright, the soup has been on for about 15 minutes or so. Everything's pretty well at the point where I want it. The potatoes are softened up, the meat is pretty well tender. I will start adding the cheese. Like I said, about 8 ounces of white cheddar. And what I'll do is add a little bit of time because you don't want lumps. So we'll do half right now. Go ahead and stir that in. Like I said, if you want to, aesthetically it doesn't look good. You can use yellow cheddar. Like I said, it just makes the soup look real orangey. White cheddar is the best if you want aesthetics. I mean, flavor wise, it doesn't matter what cheese you put into it. Or actually what cheddar you put in, as long as you put cheddar in it. I'll put another little batch in there. I'll end up using a whole bag since the bag itself is just 8 ounces. Make sure you stir it well, get it all mixed in everywhere within the soup. The soup has thickened up. It's about where I want it. put the last batch in. There we go. I'm going to turn the stove off on this and let it cool for about 10 to 15 minutes or so. Then I'll serve it up and take a few pictures. Again, if you like what you saw, please hit that like button. And if you ever cook any of my recipes, please let me know how they turn out. And as always, till next time, have a great week and a great weekend. And bon appetit.